Welcome back to another episode of Tidal Flooding Talk, brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. Another episode with the guys show, the meteorologist show. Our guest today is a guy and a meteorologist, so it'll be Three's Company, coming to us from northeastern Pennsylvania, Lehigh Valley, northeastern Pennsylvania. Dan Skeldon. Dan Skeldon, how's it going?
Good. How you doing? Happy meteorological summer. Last week we talked about the start of summer just after Memorial Day. Summer season's here. So this week we have meteorological summer and the start of hurricane season. So hopefully a quiet season, but we are now officially into the Atlantic hurricane season as well.
Yeah, and the forecasts have been on the near to below average side. Doesn't necessarily mean there's not going to be a storm for you, but there's a lower than average chance. And of course, with coastal storm, with coastal storm, yes, but hurricanes come tidal flooding, and we are always talking about what we can do to protect our shorelines. One of the things you can do to protect your shoreline is being engaged and aware of what the weather is. We could go on for a half hour about weather apps, your Apple weather app, your Google weather app. The short story is a lot of these weather apps, they take computer model data and just spit it out without any human massaging or, no human input. Listen, if it's sunny and dry for 5 days in a row, okay, it doesn't really matter if it's 77 and your weather app says it's 73, right? But when there's big storms, Dan, how many times do people tell you a week before snow might come? Dan, I saw 12 inches on my weather app. Do you think it's true?
Happens all the time. Or the weather app says, thunderstorms at a specific time, and people take that verbatim. Or you can go on and on. Weather apps can be a great resource and a great headache at the same time for meteorologists.
Yes, but that has changed. There is now one weather app that I can now say that I recommend it, because this man right here, Cory Mottice, developed the best free weather app in human history, and he's here to talk to us all about it on Tidal Flooding Talk. So, Cory, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem. So the app that we are talking about is the Everything Weather app. You can find it on the Apple Store. You can have it on the Google Store. There is a free version. There's a paid version, which I have subscribed to. Cory, people tell me, I just said it, people ask me at least once a week, Joe, what weather app do you use? I'm like, well, I really don't use weather apps. But that has now changed, because I said there is the Everything Weather app. And what's so great about this app is that this is all data from the National Weather Service and NOAA and your partners. You are a National Weather Service, meteorologist yourself. First of all, thank you for making the app. Thank you, Cory.
It was my pleasure. It was a lot of fun, and I still enjoy trying to get as much data in there as possible, and trying to keep it on a level that's useful to everyone, not just for the weather geeks like us.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. So I'm going to give a little backstory, and Cory, feel free, if I'm saying something wrong, feel free to chime in.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people ask, well, why doesn't the National Weather Service have an app? And my understanding is that you are prohibited by the National Weather Service to have an app because you can't compete with private enterprises. Is that correct?
Oh, I don't know where it stands today. Years and years ago, that used to be the case. Today, it's more of just the funding side of things. It's a lot to maintain an app for multiple different phone devices and all that kind of stuff. There's been some talk about potentially doing that in the future. They're trying to optimize mobile sites for it and everything. I don't think that's necessarily the case anymore, but honestly, I'm not completely clear on where that stands today.
Okay. And just tell us real briefly, what is the value to having this app, in the sense of there is actual data from meteorologists at the National Weather Service, right, that are, curating this data that you're then putting out, as opposed to, let's say, your Apple weather app?
That you hit the nail on the head. It's coming. There's someone looking at the data. The data is not just some model. There are folks that are local experts in wherever you are in the country that are on the app, or that are at the Weather Service office. There's 120 plus offices across the country, and they are experts in weather across that particular area. And so they are working with the data themselves, putting their own discussions in, for what they're expecting to happening and the reasoning behind it. And so you have your local experts basically at the tip of your fingers.
Cory, how big of an undertaking was this for you? Like said, it's monetarily, it can be expensive to maintain an app or build an app. So what kind of sparked your desire to do this, and how big of an undertaking was it?
It was pretty significant. I had never developed an app before. I'd never written any code before, so it was learning on my own. This is before AI is like it is today when I started this. So back then it was handwritten codes and going into YouTube and watching videos and following tutorials and just learning. And initially I started making it only for Apple and then realized it's way too much work for one person to maintain an Apple app plus an Android app separately. So then I knew I had to learn React Native, and there was just a lot that went into it. It was honestly a year plus of just kind of tinkering around with it, learning the code before I even really started making a lot of progress.
So who's on the Everything Weather team? Is it just you, or do you have other people that are helping?
It is just me. Wow. No one else.
So you're working a full-time job, right? And you're doing this. Like, did you sleep? Did you have sleepless nights? How long how many hours would you say it took you to get to like your first public version of this?
So it took a solid year of on and off work, and whenever I got home and it was dark out, I'm big into doing like a lot of hunting and outdoors kind of stuff. So I was usually busy. So it was more winter months that I tended to work on it. And then I had a baby. And when we had our first kid, there was a lot of sleepless nights at the start. And whenever I was up with him, which is pretty much all night for months, that's all I would do. He'd be sleeping on my chest and I'd just be working on the code with the laptop on my legs and just doing it that way. So it was just kind of finding time here and there, which is part of the reason it took so long. It's probably a solid 2 years from when I first started working on it until the first initial release on the App Store.
That's awesome, multitasking. How does now that the hard work's done, the app is built, and obviously it has updates in that. How much work goes into it as an app novice, like someone who doesn't build that stuff? I have them on my phone. I actually just downloaded yours ahead of this cast, and I'm exploring it, and I love what I see so far. But how much is the daily upkeep or the monthly maintenance now in terms of time, in terms of cost? Like how much work for you is it now that the hard work is mostly in the rearview mirror?
Yeah, no, at this point, it's more trying to figure out. We have so much data. There's way more data that the Weather Service, that NOAA entities provide than what's even in the app now. And at this point, most of the time is spent trying to figure out what is the next feature, what is the next improvement that I can add without cluttering the app up, essentially. And I don't want there to be too much clutter, but I still want the useful information in there. So I probably spend an average of 8 to 10 hours a week, more or less, that I'm generally working on it. And it's generally at night. My wife's gone to bed, or, it's late at night and I come home from work and I have some free time. It's a rainy day outside, things like that. And I just added a new feature basically that allows people to vote. So they can vote on their features that they want, which will help me because then I don't have to kind of guess what everyone wants to see. So that's kind of the hard part sometimes. A lot of what I do in the app is for myself. I want this. It's useful for me and my job, so I add it in.
How many downloads do you have on the app? And then you have paid subscribers as well. Can you tell us how many paid subscribers you have?
Total downloads so far. So it's been about a year now. Not a year since I launched the Pro version, but a year since I launched the initial app, and it's about 100,000 downloads or so at this point. And Pro, I is anywhere in that probably 3,000-ish range that are subscribed to that.
That's a good chunk of change for you, Cory.
It certainly helps. And the good news is it covers the cost of me having to run it because the servers on the back end aren't cheap. And so the way I look at it is everything that I have to pay for myself is generally what the users have to pay for in the app. I try to make everything as much as I can free. And anything that I have to like run time on my servers or Google Cloud or anything like that, then that goes under the paid version, or at least some of it. You can make one or two things of your own in that paid version that's still free on the app. But then if you want to go above and beyond that, then it's under the Pro subscription.
Awesome. We're going to take our first break and we'll come back. We'll dive more into the app and talk about its features here on Tidal Flooding. Base flood elevation is the level floodwaters are expected to reach in a major storm. Building below it puts your home at risk. Building just 1 foot above it can significantly lower flood insurance costs and reduce flood damage. And don't forget to elevate mechanical equipment like air conditioners and generators. Small changes can make a big difference. This message is brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. We are back. High tides push seawater onto roads and yards, even on sunny days as sea levels rise. The flooding damages homes, cars, roads, and it raises flood insurance costs for everyone. You can help protect yourself and your community by moving valuables upstairs, knowing your flood risk, and never drive through flood water. As the National Weather Service says, turn around, don't drown. Dan, I'll kick it off to you.
All right, we're talking the Everything Weather app with its developer, Cory Mottice. Cory, wanted to have you walk us through, or at least highlight some of the features of what this app has and some of the things you'd like to highlight, and then maybe about some of the improvements and additions coming soon, hopefully.
Yeah, so the biggest thing is it has almost every product that your local weather service office issues. And so right on the front page, you're going to get your current conditions, which I just added the ability in there to pick any weather station. So even if it's a local, you have your own weather station on CWAP or something like that, you can choose that to be your default, so you can see that information, pick a more representative station. Then the forecast discussion is right there. And that is actually about the number one most viewed thing in the entire app is the forecast discussion. So that's right there on the front page. And what's a little bit unique about it is if you get down into the main forecast area, it's going to highlight in the summer months the heat risk. So that's a relatively new product from the Weather Service, but it'll highlight days that are a bigger concern for heat-related activities. If you're doing stuff outside, that it may be a cause for concern. And if you want, you can also view all the climate information. So if you're at a site, it's going to pull your nearest climate station, but you can get some historical data for it. It's just like right there. It also has all the space weather that's more in the wintertime for folks up north. If you want to know if you have a chance to see the aurora, that information's in there. Meteor shower information, astronomy. Right on the front page, it kind of covers like the big picture points of the National Weather Service and NOAA, because it's not all Weather Service stuff. It's Space Weather Prediction Center and things like that as well. And then you also have the alerts. So any current active products that the Weather Service has issued for you, you have them right there. And then probably one of my favorite things on the front page is you have the Storm Prediction Center and the Weather Prediction Center outlooks. So you can get a pretty good idea right away if your location is in a risk for severe weather or flash flooding. You can tap that and it gives you all the information that you need to see right there.
Since this is Tidal Flooding Talk, we'll ask, what's in the app that's related to tidal flooding that you could that's offered within this app.
So I'm working on adding a new feature. I'll get to that. But what's in there right now is if you go to the radar page and you go to the layers section on there, there is a section in there for tropical, and you can go into that, or marine. And if you click on that, there is a tidal gauge. And so you can turn on the map tide gauges anywhere across the country. And there's a Great Lakes section if you want to see it for the Great Lakes as well. And if you tap on an individual station, you view more data for that, you're going to get all the charts. So you're going to get the high tides, the low tides, the forecast data that's in there. You're going to get current conditions if the sensors have that, whatever it might be, temperature and winds and dew point and all that kind of stuff. So that's what's in there right now for it. And then along rivers as well, you can get river forecast points if there's any flood warnings or anything out like that, and get forecasts. Tropical season, sometimes it's a combination. You get inland rain that leads to flooding along rivers flowing to the ocean, and tides incoming, and so you get compound flooding. So both of them can kind of factor in.
Dude, this app just keeps getting better and better. I didn't even know about that one yet. Is that it? That's all right. I'm going to be poking around with that one. I like that. Very good.
So, and the new one that's coming for that is on the homepage. You will be able to toggle on if you want to see if you're within so many miles of the coast somewhere in the country. It will give you your local tide information right there on the page for your nearest station, so you can kind of see the forecast high tide, low tide, and all that kind of stuff.
It is pretty amazing how much data the National Weather Service has. You said this is
Mhm.
all Weather Service data, and you have more data that you know what to do with,
Mhm.
which is awesome. I guess it's a good problem to have, and how much stuff you packed into here. What are some of the requests you're getting? You say you kind of opened it up to your app users as far as what they want to see added to the app. Like what are some, like, let's just say the top three things that your users are striving to see?
I'd say the number one by far, and this is before I opened up the voting on it, it has been the forecast, rainfall alerts. Like rain will be arriving at your area in, 30 minutes kind of thing. Well, the Weather Service, of course, we don't have anything like that at the Weather Service. And I've tried some third-party ones, and I have a ton of different apps on my phone. I try them out on there. They're just not very accurate. And I do not want to add information like that into the app that is not something that comes from an official source. So it's high on everyone's wish list, but it's not something I plan on adding, certainly not anytime soon, because it's just the quality of it. I know it's a kind of a novelty and people like seeing it, but the purpose of the app is to have official vetted data and not try to pull in some kind of third party like that into it. Other than that, a lot of folks want to see, let's see, I'm so an ideal one would be like raw level two radar. Things that you get
Can
in
you
like
explain what
radar
that is?
scope. What's that?
Oh, I said, can you explain what that is to our listeners?
So raw level two radar is like the high resolution radar that we're looking at in the office if you're at a National Weather Service office that's on the computer. It's things that you can get in apps like Weatherfront and WeatherWise and Radar Scope, and you can sample the data real time. I I don't know enough about coding yet to really I can do it on my own for my own app, just for my single phone. I can pull in the data, but to be able to serve that much data, these files are absolutely enormous coming off of Amazon Web Services server where they're hosted. And so being able to do that and serve I can get millions of hits on it a month, and trying to be able to figure out how to do that for very low cost to me, because I don't, it's something I don't want to run up the cost on my end very much. I want to keep it as manageable as possible. So that's been a big request, is getting those products in there. But I would love to do it. I'm trying to figure out how to do it, but I have yet to figure that out.
I just voted for the UV index.
Yeah. So, and that the EPA has. So that is on the planned list. I do plan on adding some kind of UV and pollen, both of those. Some kind of pollen forecast. The EPA, which is a government entity, does provide some of that information. So I haven't begun working on it just yet, but I do plan on looking into that.
Awesome. All right, we're going to take our final break, and we'll come back with Tidal Flooding Talk in just a minute. Thanks to the New Jersey Coastal Coalition, your flood insurance bills are lower and your streets safer from the reality of flooding. Since beginning in 2013, we build more resilient shoreline communities. Our member towns develop and share in best practices that anticipate future concerns and create flooding solutions. From our town-specific free web app for flooding information to our weekly Tidal Flooding Talk show, we focus on flooding 24/7. Visit www.njcoastalcoalition.com for more.
Welcome back to this week's Tidal Flooding Talk with meteorologist Joe Martucci. I'm Dan Skeldon. We're talking everything weather app, everything about the Everything weather app. We're with its founder, Cory Mottice. Cory, great to have you on. I guess, let me ask you, what's the selling point? Like, why is your app? I mean, there's so many weather maps out there, and Joe, of course, sung your rightful praises at the beginning, and kind of highlighted some of his features. But what's your couple sentence or 1 minute pitch as to why your app stands out among all the other ones out there?
I think the Everything Weather app generally has more data in it than almost any other app out there, more of a wide array covering from solar to astronomy to weather stories and all kinds of different stuff. But I think the biggest thing is that it's produced by your local National Weather Service forecast office. There's humans behind the forecast. It's not model data. You have your local experts that are actually producing it, and you get all the information in a much easier to read format on your phone than going to the weather.gov website or anything like that. The data is all publicly available. I'm not pulling anything that's unique or special out there. I'm just pulling straight from the public database, but it's utilizing information that your tax dollars already pay for. your tax dollars, it's about $3 a person a year is about what it costs for your taxes to fund the National Weather Service. And these are the local meteorologists that you're essentially paying to be experts in your local weather. That's their forecast.
And I guess, Cory, a follow-up question. Have you had any feedback from the National Weather Service, whether it be coworkers at your office or anything higher up the chain? I mean, you're using their data, and of course, the NWS doesn't have a standard app, but
Hmm.
any feedback from anywhere in the agency on the app?
No, no, it's completely separate because it's not associated with the Weather Service at all. I don't work on it during work time or anything like that. We can't promote apps when we're out doing any talks or anything. It's just another private weather sector app. And I've had a few folks higher up kind of reach out and just say that, they like it and keep it up. But as far as I'm not doing anything illegal
Right.
when it comes to that, I'm able to keep developing it and working on it on my own time on the side. So that's about it.
I just wonder, and I'm not. You don't have to give me an answer to this, but in I feel like especially in the past year, in this age of just weather like disinformation or misinformation, that dis and misinformation spread to the weather space. I feel like there's a need more than ever for an official source from a government agency to talk
Hmm.
about the watches and the warnings and what's happening and what's not. I just feel like if there really is no boundary to having the National Weather Service set up an app, I mean, why not do it? I mean, it just seems like it makes sense, and what you put out should be the place because we need to show that there are people that are working to talk about weather, not just what's happening in 2 days from now, but to
Hmm.
talk about the tide gauges, talk about, I love what the National Hurricane Center is doing, a lot of video stuff with their Mets. Like,
Hmm.
this would just be a great tool in the toolbox. I tend to think it's too little too late from the standpoint of like that dis and misinformation is already out there, but I think
Hmm.
this would help curtail some of it.
Yeah, and I honestly don't know where any of that stands. I mean, I'm hopeful. I would love it if the Weather Service did an app. I don't know what the realistic odds of that are, but I do know, like you said, the Hurricane Center is doing some good stuff this year, but they're also in past years, if you went to the Hurricane Center mobile website, it was pretty much unusable on your phone. It just looked like a desktop app. But they have a brand new mobile version of their website, but it's still a website. It's not an app, which I know for a lot of folks, that's a huge drawback. You want to go to the App Store and just download the app, but you can save like their mobile nhc.noaa.gov or something like that. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but their mobile version of the website, which I think will be launched here in about 2 weeks or so, start of hurricane season, it should be launched. And it's much cleaner. It looks really nice on your phone. And I know weather.gov 2.0 will be coming in the future at some point, and they're planning on doing something similar, but I'm not sure if there's any plans at all for an app.
And I think it's great. That's you kind of filled that void because the Weather Service has such great meteorologists. I mean, all across the country, 100-something offices, and like we've talked several times about, mentioned several times, the data's there. The data is so
Mhm.
useful, so impressive, and to present it all in a compact and very neat presentation in your app and easy to use. I think it does the public a huge service to have that data readily available in the palm of their hand. So thank you as a fresh, recent downloader who's looking to look into the app a little bit more.
Yeah, and the local meteorologists at your office, at the Weather Service office, spend a lot of time on graphics trying to get messaging out what the impacts are going to be. And that's something else that's in there is their weather stories that are created locally by the Mets in your office that are putting it out. And it's right there. You can view the graphics and zoom in on them if you want, get information that way. There's so many different ways now in this day and age to get information. I don't want to add any fluff to it. I just want it to be, here's the forecast, here's what we're expecting. That's it.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Cory, thanks for hopping on. You can check out the Everything Weather app on the Apple Store, Play Store, wherever you get your apps there. We're not done just quite yet. We're gonna get to the one thing we can't stop talking about, tidal flooding or otherwise, and we'll kick it off with you like we usually do.
Well, I'd be remiss since we are talking apps and I love my fresh download. I probably have about maybe 20 weather apps on my phone, so I can't wait to explore
Oh,
this more.
wow.
Yeah, I got about 20.
That's a lot.
I got Matt and Danielle's 1 Degree Outside app from up in Boston. We've had them on a previous guest. But I would have to also plug our, since I work for 69 News, WFMZ TV in the Lehigh Valley, our 69 News Storm Center app, which we are very proud of as a great source for local weather as well. I'm always like, with meteorologists and like, your local meteorologists, you can have one, you can have several, but, do the trusted ones, and it's nice to blend. So I will throw a little plug for our app, which I think is great, and our web team has worked hard on to throw a lot of features out there as well. Not to take anything away from what Cory has done. I'm just adding on to it as another good source.
Totally. That's definitely fair. All right. So one thing I've been thinking about is, we are in summer. A climatological summer started on June 1st. And I think like the best time of summer is mid-June to mid-July, because like summer's like still on the upward trajectory. It's getting hotter. You got the pool, you got the beach, you got 4th of July coming up. People are not like done with summer yet. Like I feel like once you get towards like late August, it's like, okay, we've done this again. Like there's still a lot of like newness to summer. So we're not there yet, but I'm just looking forward to like that mid-June, mid-July for us here in New Jersey. Cory doesn't have to worry about this in Southern Texas, but now the weather is steadying out. It is steady summer weather, unlike the ups and downs that we had in May and even a little bit here in early June. So it's not weather app, but it's weather adjacent here. But I think we're getting into the best time of summer, mid-June to mid-July. You might think differently in Corpus Christi, though, Cory. It might be too hot and humid for you.
I moved here for the hot and humid, so I like it.
Awesome. What's on your mind? What tidal flooding or otherwise?
So, the biggest thing, I've been doing a lot of hurricane talks lately, and we've been working with AI a lot. And so what kind of has been sticking out to me, and I'm trying to get the message across, we've been seeing it a lot already, is the fake images that are generated with AI that you can't tell from reality, especially when it comes to actual storm damage. And that's going to be the same when it comes to hurricanes and flooding and whatever else it might be, is just making sure that you have your reliable source for information with that. I mean, if you don't take what you get on social media as gospel. You need to vet it and make sure it's coming from a source you trust, not just some high school kid that's posting something on social media or posting the NAM hurricane making landfall that's notoriously going to bomb it out to 875 millibars or something crazy. Just making sure that you know where you're getting your information from and that it's a reliable source, whether that's your local TV app, whether it's the local National Weather Service office, whoever it is, just make sure it's someone that you trust.
What about those Category 6 hurricanes?
Yeah, that too.
Awesome.
And that question was brought up at some of the conferences this year, and the Hurricane Center did say that it's not on the table.
I think we're good with 5. I'm very happy with our 5 that we have. Anyway, Cory, thanks so much for coming on. Everything Weather app, go download it. There's a free version. There's a paid version if you want the extra features. It's fantastic, and we're happy to have you on. And we'll look forward to the updates that come. You are listening to Tidal Flooding Talk, a podcast brought to you by the New Jersey Coastal Coalition. New episodes come out every Tuesday. You can download it on pretty much any major podcast platform, subscribe on YouTube, or you can watch it on the Facebook pages of the Coastal Coalition, Dan Skeldon, or myself. We'll be back with you next Tuesday with a new episode. Take care, everybody.